السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. رب زدنا علما، رب زدنا علما، رب زدنا علما نافعا، آمين. Inshallah, in today's session, we will talk about the Taymiyyan triangle of politics. The political thought of Al-Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, can be summarized in this triangle, which has at the top the political authority, the rulers, the ulama, the scholars who advise the rulers, and the community which practices its political will in establishing the political system which is based on the Sharia and the higher principles of the Sharia, for example, justice, al-adl. This is a triangle, which means that all these three foundations are important for the political system in the thought of Al-Imam Ibn Taymiyyah. If one of the foundations is missing, the political system is incomplete. The relationship, which has been pointed to in arrows here, the relationship between these three political communities, the rulers, the ulama, and the Muslim Ummah, the community, is based on mutual collaboration and criticism. At-ta'awun, support, collaboration, and criticism. This is the core of the relationship between these three political communities. And this triangle has been formulated in a very innovative method and manner in the thought of Ibn Taymiyyah, which separates him and his thought in many ways from the classical period of Islamic political theory. In today's discussion, let us see the responsibilities, roles, and the qualities of these three foundations of political system in the thought of Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah. We know in order to understand Shaykhul Islam, rahimahullah, we also have to engage with some of his students who also expanded and explained his ideas, particularly in the political theory. And from the most prominent of his students is Al-Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, who does not need any introduction. He has compiled a full dedicated work in explaining the political ideas which he imbibed and understood from his teacher, Al-Imam Ibn Taymiyyah. The name of the book is At-Turuq al-Hukmiyyah fi Siyasa Shar'iyyah, which has been published. So, in order to understand Ibn Taymiyyah, we engage with his books and also the formulation of some from his students, like Al-Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah. In explaining the first foundation, which is power, rulers, political authority, Ibn Taymiyyah has some distinct ideas which are new, innovative, and in these ideas he separates himself from the classical political theory. He does not separate per se, but he adds to it. He makes it more vibrant. So in the first foundation, remember, this is a mutual cooperation, relationship based on mutual cooperation. The rulers, they don't exist without the advice of the ulama and the community, which manifests its political will. The community does not exist without the rulers. So this is all mutual. The existence of the rulers depends on the existence of the ulama. The existence of the ulama depends on the rulers and the community on rulers and the ulama, so on and so forth. That's why we called it the political Taymiyyan triangle. So about the rulers and the highest hierarchy in this triangle, highest point in the hierarchy of political authority are the rulers and the power. And Ibn Taymiyyah has some distinct and special points and ideas to offer about all these foundations, as I said. Regarding the power, he gives us some important principles. Separating himself from the classical theory, he did not understand power as inherently contaminated and contaminating. So in the classical period of political theory, this idea spread about the rulers, siyasa, which we discussed, if you remember, about Al-Imam Al-Turtushi and how some Western scholars have tried to promote the secularist theory, the secularism of the Muslim political thinkers. And we refuted that idea. There are many scholars in the classical period who started considering power and authority and politics as something negative because of the context in those times. And this led to the elitism of the ulama and the Sufi pious scholars. Now, if the community wants to exist, it must look not to the rulers, because siyasa has been contaminated, it is polluted, but rather to the scholars. The guiding group for the community are the scholars, ulama, and the pious leaders in that community. This became a norm because of the chaos, civil warfare in those times, and also the injustice which prevailed in the ruling class. So for Ibn Taymiyyah, power is not inherently contaminated, is not inherently contaminated and contaminating. Power in itself, if applied, political authority, if applied with justice and maintaining the higher principles of Deen, is something good. And we should not separate it from the community. So this idea of sultan, which prevailed in those times, sultan is completely separated from the public life. Sultan is above accountability. Sultan is evil. So if you face injustice from sultans, you ask for justice from only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sultans have been thrusted upon you because of your sins. And these ideas, which are still very common. Ibn Taymiyyah departed his way from these ideas. He said, we have to engage with power. There may be sultans who are evil, and we may face and experience decline in the political authority, but we have to deal with it. We have to have a relationship. The community should not disconnect completely from the political affairs and the political authorities. Even with the evil rulers, our engagement will be based on it will not be based on good and evil, prioritizing between good and evil, but between greater evil and lesser evil, so on and so forth. In Majmu' al-Fatawa, rahimahullah, Ibn Taymiyyan, rahimahullah, says, in explaining this separation of the community from the ruling class because of its evil, he says, وَلَكِنْ افترق النَّاسُ هُنَا ثَلَاثُ فِرَقٍ. People here in this mas'ala are divided into three groups. فريق غلب عليهم حب العلو في الأرض والفساد فلم ينظروا في عاقبة المعاد. The first is the ruling class, upon whom the love of corruption and authority became dominant, and they did not reflect on the consequences in the hereafter. ورأوا أن السلطان لا يقوم إلا بعطاء وقد لا يتأتى العطاء إلا باستخراج أموال من غير حلها. And they made a policy. They understood that authority, sultan, can never be established except by spending money, by expenditure in all directions. And this ata cannot happen except if we take the wealth and amwal illegally. So this expenditure cannot happen. The maintaining of the political authority cannot happen except by money power. And money power means that you must, your state, your authority, political authority, must have revenue. So they focused on revenue even from illegal means. فَصَارُوا نَهَّابِينَ. They became looters. They became looters, oppressors. وَهَؤُلَاءِ يَقُولُونَ. And these people say, لَا يُمْكِنُ أَن يَتَوَلَّى عَلَى النَّاسِ إِلَّا مَنْ يَأْكُلْ وَيُطْعِمْ. Their policy is, no one can maintain political authority over people except a person, except a ruler who himself eats and makes other eat. He eats himself, and he oppresses the wealth, and he gives it illegally to others. So he maintains his political authority by money. So economics plays a very important role. Money power. And this is even relevant in our times also. If you remember the story of Sulaiman and the queen of Saba in the Quran, what is the first option she wanted to try with Sulaiman alayhi salam? It was, as Quran says, when she took counsel and advice from her ministers, they said, we are people of power, we can fight, we can engage in war. But this was not the first option she took, because she understood the problems of battles and warfare. The first option she took was, I will send a gift to Sulaiman. So applying money power. This is what the economic hitmans do in our times, to make people and countries, rulers, their slaves. And this is one of the main reasons that the Muslim world is not rising from the slavery, because they are in debt, they are economically weak, they are subservient to the Western economic institutions. So people started thinking, because this was the current ruling power of those times, and this was the method. فإنه إذا تولى العفيف الذي لا يأكل ويطعم سخط عليه الرؤساء وعزلوه. That's why if a pious ruler came to authority who did not eat and spend wealth in all directions, سخط عليه الرؤساء. The heads of his state, or those who were at the helm of affairs, they became uneasy with him. وَعَزَلُوهُ. And they did not accept his authority. إِن لَمْ يَضُرُّوهُ فِي نَفْسِهِ وَمَالِهِ. Even if they did not harm him in his self and in his wealth. But they did not accept his political authority because he was neither eating himself, yani he was not consuming this wealth by illegal means, and he was not spending it on his ministers and others to maintain political authority. His political authority was not accepted, and they pulled this sultan down. He was not able to maintain the authority. وَهَؤُلَاءِ نَظَرُوا فِي عَاجِلِ دُنْيَاهُمْ. So these people, the first group, they only, their focus was this dunya. وَأَهْمَلُوا الْآجِلَ مِنْ دُنْيَاهُمْ وَآخِرَتِهِمْ. And they neglected the consequences, future, in this dunya and akhirah. فَعَاقِبَتُهُمْ عَاقِبَةٌ رَدِيئَةٌ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. So their end is an evil end in dunya and akhirah. إِن لَمْ يَحْصُلْ لَهُمْ مَا يُصْلِحُ عَاقِبَتَهُمْ مِنْ تَوْبَةٍ وَنَحْوِهَا. If they don't acquire what reforms their next life, like repenting and changing their policies. So if they don't do that, their now and their present and future is destroyed, which means they will not be able to maintain political authority for long. So this is the first group. وَفَرِيقٌ عِنْدَهُمْ خَوْفٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَدِينٌ يَمْنَعُهُمْ أَمَّا يَعْتَقِدُونَهُ قَبِيحًا مِّن ظُلْمِ الْخَلْقِ وَفِعْلِ الْمَحَارِمِ. The second group is those who fear Allah and they follow Deen, they follow religion, which stops them from adopting policies or believing in policies which are evil, like oppressing the people and engaging in the prohibitions. فَهَذَا حَسَنٌ وَاجِبٌ. This is good and obligatory. ولكن قد يعتقدون مع ذلك أن السياسة لا تتم إلا بما يفعله أولئك من الحرام. Again, now this is important here. But even these good rulers who fear Allah, who follow Deen, they are not oppressive, but they may believe that politics can never be applied correctly except on the method of the first group. So these people, they have good niyyah, but they believe that politics, because this was the image of politics in those days. Politics had become very evil. So they said, if we want to maintain the system and peace and tranquility of the state, we may have to engage in evil politics. فَيَمْتَنِعُونَ عَنْهَا مُطْلَقًا. So they may think that the politics can never be applied, good politics can never be established except in evil ways, because politics inherently is evil or contaminated. So what they do is فَيَمْتَنِعُونَ عَنْهَا مُطْلَقًا. So they save themselves completely, they avoid politics completely. وَرُبَّمَا كَانَ فِي نُفُوسِهِمْ جُبْنٌ أَوْ بُخْلٌ أَوْ ضِيقُ خَلْقٍ أو ضيق خلق ينضم إلى ما معهم من الدين. Or they may have some weak qualities in their nafs, which adds fuel to this problem. So they are good rulers, they are pious, they fear Allah, but they don't engage in politics because politics is evil. If I want to do politics, the only path of doing politics is evil politics. So they separate themselves from politics altogether. They are not good at politics. And if they have some evil qualities like jubun or bukhul, they are stingy in their nature, or they are coward, this adds fuel to the problem. فَيَقَعُونَ أَحْيَانًا فِي تَرْكِ وَاجِبٍ. So they eventually will sometimes fall in leaving an obligation. As rulers, as political authorities, you have obligation of establishing justice, and so they leave obligations. يَكُونُ تَرْكُهُ أَضَرْ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ بَعْضِ الْمُحَرَّمَاتِ. Leaving which may be more harmful sometimes than the haram and prohibitions itself. So they may personally stay away from haram. As rulers, they may be good, but when they completely distance themselves from politics, they may not be able to fulfill the obligations, which is more harmful than some prohibitions altogether. أو يقعون في النهي عن واجب يكون النهي عنه من الصد عن سبيل الله, or they may fall into prohibiting from an obligation, which may fall into stopping from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he explains more. He says this is the second group which thinks they are good, pious, they have good intention, they have good vision, but they abstain completely from politics because politics is evil. And then he explains the harms which they may end up in. Al-Fariq al-Thalith, the third group, is Al-Ummatul Wasat, the golden mean community, or the political authority which adopts the golden mean, balance. وهم أهل دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وخلفائه على عامة الناس وخاصتهم إلى يوم القيامة. They are the people who follow the deen of Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم and his rightly guided خلفاء, rightly guided successors. وهو إنفاق المال والمنافع للناس. They engage in good politics. They don't run away from politics, which is spending the wealth. They engage in wealth, revenue, in benefiting people. وإن كانوا رؤساء, even if they are the heads of the state, ministers, they spend on them also with justice. بحسب الحاجة, according to the need. إلى صلاح الأحوال, in reforming the conditions of people. ولإقامة الدين, and establishing the religion. والدنيا, and also dunya, establishing both religion, religious and worldly affairs. التي يحتاج إليها الدين, which is required by the deen, by the religion. So فيجمعون بين التقوى والإحسان. In this policy, they combine between personal piety and good with others. إن الله مع الذين اتقوا والذين هم محسنون. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with those who are pious and they observe goodness and ihsan with others. ولا تتم السياسة الدينية إلا بهذا. The politics which is based on religion, religious politics, can never be established except in this manner. ولا يصلح الدين والدنيا إلا بهذه الطريقة. And the worldly affairs, the religious affairs, can never be reformed except by this method. And then he describes in detail their policy, how this golden mean group establishes and engages with politics. So he says the salihin, the pious, who are أرباب السياسة الكاملة, they are the possessors of perfect politics. هم الذين قاموا بالواجبات وتركوا المحرمات. They are those who establish the obligations and they abstain from haram in their policies. وهم الذين يعطون ما يصلح الدين بعطائه. And they are those who spend in the path which reforms the religion. ولا يأخذون إلا ما أبيح لهم. And they don't take except what is permissible. ويغضبون لربهم إذا انتهكت محارمه. And they express the anger for their Lord when his limits are transgressed. When the limits of Allah are transgressed in their communities, they express the anger. They enjoin good and forbid evil. So on and so forth. Yani this is what we called the engagement of Ibn Taymiyyan with politics. So power is not inherently contaminated and contaminating in the thought of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyan. Another important quality which he adds here is politics is the art of the possible. Is the art of the possible. And we have pointed to this before also in explaining the thought of early Muslim political thinkers. The problem which happened in the classical period in this engagement with politics completely, like we see the quietism and separatism from politics in many ulama in those times. For example, Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he would not even like to see the face of the Khalifa. He was invited once to the palace and he rejected, so on and so forth. We know his method. And Imam Ahmad is one of the mainstream scholars. He's not someone who was not famous, and he did not engage in the reform of the community directly. So we see this quietism and separatism because politics, according to them, is evil. Okay, why? One of the reasons for this thought is utopian thinking. When we imagine prioritizing only between good and evil, it's either good or evil. This is a big problem which has destroyed the minds of the current Muslims, also the Muslims of the current times. There is utopian thinking is destructive. We have to maintain the ideals and the principles as we have discussed, but reform in any area of life is about searching for the possibilities. For this reason, Ibn Taymiyyan rahimahullah emphasizes in many places in his works about he emphasizes on the importance of understanding this art of searching the possibilities. So, for example, he says real fiqh is not the art of prioritizing between good and evil. Differentiating between good and evil is possible for every sane Muslim. The real fiqh is understanding and prioritizing between greater good and lesser good, greater evil and lesser evil. If you want to clean a place, you cannot clean it in one go. You will clean it in stages. And these stages are part of the cleaning process. And in that process, this filth may come upon your clothes also. So you may have to wash your clothes later on, but this is part of the process. If you say, no, I will never clean this place, except with the condition that it will be cleaned in blink of an eye, no gradualism, no stages, and I myself should not involve in any filth. My clothes, myself, should remain completely clean. You will never be able to clean this place in this manner. You may have to make a compromise. So politics is the art of the possible. Sometimes we may not have the best ruler. Sometimes we may not have the best options, but we have to find the possibilities. We cannot disengage with the politics completely because we don't have khilafah, nation states. And of course, we believe in khilafah. We don't believe in nation states, but this is what we have in our times, nation states. Now we have to find ways and possibilities in this if we want to guide the Muslims. So utopian thinking is just giving fatwa and imaginary principles, which are not applied now. They may apply when Imam Mahdi comes. They may apply after 1,000 years. But what about the Muslims living in our times? Who will give solutions to their problems now? We need problems now. We need the solutions to the problems which they are facing now. If religious scholars, ulama, and religious community cannot guide the Muslims now, it has failed. So politics is the art of the possible. And in that, he he explains this in many ways, or with different examples we can understand this principle in the works of Ibn Taymiyyan, rahimahullah. As I said, he always emphasizes on prioritizing between fiqh. The real fiqh is prioritizing between greater evil and lesser evil. This is the real fiqh. I will read some lines from Majmu' al-Fatawa again, his magnum opus. Uh, he says, give me a minute. Yes. So taking the possible options, if we cannot apply the perfect principles, we don't completely separate ourselves. We look into the possibilities. And this is what we said, politics is the art of the possible. He says, وَمَنْ كَانَ عَاجِزًا عَنْ إِقَامَةِ الدِّينِ بِالسُّلْطَانِ وَالْجِهَادِ. Whoever is incapable of establishing the religion with power and jihad. ففعل ما يقدر عليه من النصيحة بقلبه والدعاء للأمة ومحبة الخير. And he did what he is capable of from giving the nasiha or from sincerity by his heart and dua for the ummah ومحبة الخير and loving the good وفعل ما يقدر عليه من الخير and doing what is in his capability from good لم يكلف ما يعجز عنه. He is not responsible for what he is not capable of. Subhanallah. This is a very straightforward and deep statement of Ibn Taymiyyah. If a person is not able to establish Deen by power in jihad, he does not separate himself. He searches for the possible options. And if he does what is in his capability, he's not mukallaf for other than that. فَإِنَّ قِوَامَ الدِّينِ بِالْكِتَابِ الْيَهْدِي وَالْحَدِيدِ النَّاصِرِ. Again, he repeats the same statement which we explained. Because for indeed, the establishment of this religion is by guiding book and the supporting iron. He says, Al-Hadid al-Nasir here, not safe. كما ذكره الله تعالى, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned. فعلى كل أحد الاجتهاد في اتفاق القرآن والحديد لله تعالى. So it is obligatory on everyone to do ijtihad, to strive according to the best of his ability in supporting and agreeing with the book and the iron, the power, the authority, whatever is in his capability for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So politics is the art of the possible. Another guiding principle about the first foundation in this triangle, which is the rulers, is that Ibn Taymiyyah focused on the higher principles of political authority. In the classical period, the focus was more about the ruler himself, not the principles of ruling the ruler, because the Abbasid Khilafah had become symbolic. It was dying. So the scholars like Al-Imam al-Ghazali and others, they focused on explaining the qualities of the ruler, maintaining it, and they were facing the Shia threat, which has a completely different political theory and principles. So the focus was the ruler. Who is the ruler? The conditions of the ruler, uh, so on and so forth. But Ibn Taymiyyah shifted his focus from the ruler to the method of ruling. And in that, he emphasized on higher principles of ruling. And from these higher principles, the most prominent, which appears in his works, scattered in Majmu' al-Fatawa or in his treatise, As-Siyasa al-Shar'iyya, is justice, al-adl. Justice is the ultimate political virtue. Justice for the welfare of the community. And he explains this everywhere. And he accepts this principle and applies it to such a level that he equates it with the religion itself. This is a very important masala. He says if justice is present in a community, in a political system, even if it's disbelieving, even if this political system and the rulers are disbelievers, it will experience stability. And if justice is missing from a Muslim political system, the rulers are Muslims, the community is the community of the believers, justice is missing, it will destabilize. It will not survive. So he equates justice, principle of justice, with the religion itself. So Islamic political system for Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah is not only about implementing Sharia. This would be a reductionist method. It is not only implementing fragments of the Sharia, implementing rulings, implementing the criminal law, which is important, no doubt, but rather implementing the higher principles of politics promoted by the Sharia or Islam. And from these higher principles, justice takes the most prominent place. So he says in his work As-Siyasa al-Shar'iyya, وأمور الناس تستقيم في الدنيا مع العدل الذي فيه الاشتراك في أنواع الإثم. The worldly matters of people, they remain stable with justice. أكثر مما تستقيم مع الظلم في الحقوق. More than oppression in rights. And he is giving a general principle for all societies, not only Muslim. So the worldly matters of people, they remain stable with justice. And they destabilize with dhulm, particularly in the rights between human beings. وَلِهَذَا قِيلَ. For this reason, it has been said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُقِيمُ الدَّوْلَةَ الْعَادِلَةَ وَإِنْ كَانَتْ كَافِرَةً. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will establish or give stability to a just state, even if it is disbelieving. وَلَا يُقِيمُ الظَّالِمَ وَإِنْ كَانَتْ مُسْلِمَةً. And Allah will never give stability to an oppressive state, even if it is Muslimah. And you remember, we have explained this from the book of Al-Imam Al-Mawardi, Adab Deen wa Dunya, because this appears, according to my knowledge, for the first time in the book of Al-Imam Al-Mawardi, rahimahullah. And he quotes the early wise politicians for this quote, for this saying. ويقال, and it has also been said, الدنيا تدوم مع العدل والكفر ولا تدوم مع الظلم والإسلام. Wallahi, this is one of the most important, pressing, profound statements which we need to memorize, particularly in our times. What is happening in the Muslim world and the hardship, difficulty, calamities we're facing, this one statement can explain that all. Let me write it here. He says, it has been said, الدنيا تدوم. Dunya will continue to remain stable. مع العدل, with justice. والكفر, and disbelief. Subhanallah. The worldly affairs will remain stable with justice and kufr, disbelief. ولا تدوم, and dunya, worldly affairs, will never remain stable مع الظلم والإسلام, with oppression, injustice, and Islam. الدنيا تدوم مع العدل والكفر. Dunya will remain stable with justice and disbelief, kufr. ولا تدوم, and it will never remain stable مع الظلم والإسلام, with injustice and Islam. That's why I said Imam Ibn Taymiyyah equated this principle of justice with the religion itself, as if this principle is the quintessence of political manifestation in Islam. And then he explains this with some hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After that he says, وَذَلِكَ أَنَّ الْعَدْلَ نِظَامُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. Adl, justice, is the nizam of everything, is the foundation of everything. فَإِذَا أُقِيمَ أَمْرُ الدُّنْيَا بِعَدْلٍ. If the worldly matters are established by justice, قامت, they will be stable. وَإِن لَمْ يَكُنْ لِصَاحِبِهَا فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنْ خَلَاقٍ. Even if the one who establishes it does not have any share in hereafter. وَمَتَى لَمْ تَقُمْ بِعَدْلٍ. And when the worldly matters are not established with justice, لَمْ تَقُمْ, they will never remain stable, they will never be established. وَإِن كَانَ لِصَاحِبِهَا مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ مَا يُجْزَى بِهِ فِي الْآخِرَةِ. Even if the person who establishes it, yani establishes injustice and oppression, has great iman, but his policies are wrong. فالنفس فيها داء الظلم لغيرها بالألوب عليه والحسد له. Because the human nature and nafs contains these evil qualities which lead to oppression, which lead to injustice, like envy and al-ulu, the desire and greed for status, والتعدي عليه في حقه, and consuming the rights of people. وداء الظلم لنفسها يتناول الشهوات القبيحة. And this oppression, الظلم, he explains oppression in a comprehensive meaning. Oppression is not only in harming the benefits of people, but oppression as a policy, oppression as the nizam, as the policy of a state, so on and so forth. So this is how he explains justice. That's why I said justice in the political thought of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah is the ultimate political virtue. You can call it justice is the ultimate political virtue in the thought of Ibn Taymiyyah. And this is what is missing in other states. Rule of law doesn't exist. The rulers in the Muslim countries most of them are despots, oppressive. And there is oppression between the community itself. Muslims are oppressing each other. We are very good sometimes in dealing with disbelievers. And when it comes to dealing with each other, we want to cut the throats of each other, so on and so forth. So justice is the ultimate political virtue for the welfare of the community. In some places, Ibn Taymiyyah, he highlights the importance of fitra-guided practical reason for the rulers and the community. So he was against elitism. We will not repeat it. We have explained. Elitism, which happened in the classical age. And we also discussed about fitrah as an evidence against the rational evidences of mutakallimin. So in empowering the community and politicizing the community, the tools which he highlighted, they belong to everyone. So fitrah guided practical reason is an important method and evidence which can be used by the rulers. Another important mas'ala which he highlighted is the nature of the political authority. Nature. We are still in the first type, the rulers, the political authority. Nature of the political authority. In the classical period, rulers, as I said, the separatism, the separation of community from the ruling class, the political authority, it became widespread. Rulers were considered beyond accountability, siyasa, evil, contaminated, as we have explained. And this was not the case in the golden period of Islam, the Rashidun, al-Khilafah al-Rashida period. In those times, the rulers were seen as wukala of people, employees, ajir of people. They're representatives of people. So there was no difference between community and the rulers. Rulers were from the community. They would live as common people. Elitism had not happened. So this is drifting away from the idea of sultan, which became established in the classical period. Sultan is dhillullah fil ard. Sultan is the shadow of God on earth. So this exaggerated idea about sultan became a great problem, according to Ibn Taymiyyan. And he, in his thought, emphasized the early Rashidun idea of the political authority. Ruler is from the people. And he has used these terms, ajir. Rulers are employees. Okay. Now you can see in some Muslim countries, this problem still exists. Rulers are beyond accountability. Rulers are an elitist class of people. They live in a different world. And they are not seen as employees of the community and the representatives, wukala of the community. So for this reason, Ibn Taymiyyah focused on, in the nature of the political authority, he focused on two important conditions for the rulers. Even if the religion of the rulers is weak, the personal religious practice is weak, if these two conditions are present, they have the right to rule, and their political authority will bring stability to the community. And he took it from the Quran. The first quality is strength in all aspects. And the second quality is trustworthiness. And he took it from the ayat about a great political leader in the times of Banu Israel, Talut, who was appointed as the leader by Allah himself. So Allah, in explaining the qualities, the main qualities which have made him the ruler, and he deserves the political authority because of those qualities, are two. He is strong and he is ameen. He is trustworthy. So Ibn Taymiyyah says, even if personal religious practice is weak, if these two conditions are met, they can be, they deserve to rule. And this idea of rulers beyond authority, which was also promoted by the Shia political thought. Because as I said, in 5th and 6th century, the classical period, Shias became the main ruling class of the Muslim world. So the Shia idea of infallible Imam, the political ruler is the infallible Imam who does not commit any sins. Now, this also helped in fostering the elitism of the rulers. That's why Ibn Taymiyyan, rahimahullah, in his critique of the Shia, you will see the critique of the Shia ideas is present in the project of all major reformers, like Al-Imam Al-Ghazali, Al-Imam Al-Juwayni, and others. Ibn Taymiyyah also, in his critique of the Shia ideas, he emphasized this important fact that the rulers are common people, like common people. They are not infallible. They may commit mistakes and errors. However, we must maintain this political triangle in order to criticize, in order to maintain the checks and the balances with the ruling class also. The community has the right to criticize, sometimes even rebel against the rulers with very tight and strict conditions. So those who think that Ibn Taymiyyah was completely against rebellion is a mistake. We'll come to that. The relationship between rulers, ulama, and community is the relationship of mutual ta'awun and criticism, checks and balances. Okay, so this is one of the main discussions which is present in Ibn Taymiyyah's thought, critique of the Shia, infallible Imam. Okay, so he has discussed this in Minhaj al-Sunnah, which is a work against, in the critique of Shia. And we can extract political theory of Ibn Taymiyyah, at least some basic principles from this work also. So in Minhaj al-Sunnah, he refutes in other books. So this was again reforming the mistake or correcting the mistake which happened in the classical times. So rulers are common people, they are common Muslims. They are responsible, they are employees. So they are not a different class. So in this also, he shifted the focus from ruler to the Sharia and the community. As we said, the main genius of Ibn Taymiyyah was shifting the focus from the ruler to the Sharia to the community as a whole. And this can also be seen in his bold critique of the well-entrenched juristic tradition on the law of rebellion. Okay, because the law of rebellion developed in the classical age, it became fixed in some principles. Ibn Taymiyyah even disagreed with some of the fixed principles about the law of rebellion. Okay, because rulers were considered beyond authority. Sultan is the shadow of God on earth, so on and so forth, a different dunya, a different world. And rebellion means, because the law of rebellion in Islamic jurisprudence and fiqh revolved around Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu. And Ali was a great Sahabi and a just ruler. But this was a mistake to consider all rulers like Ali. Every ruler is not like Ali. So if you say the law of rebellion, that's why when someone asked Ali ibn Abi Talib about the rebellion and strife which happened in his times, someone asked him, compared his age with the age of Abu Bakr and Umar. He said, your age has only brought strife, calamities, and trials and tribulations to the Muslims. How good was the age of Abu Bakr and Umar? So Ali was a great genius, mujtahid. When he heard this, he replied with a great acumen and principle. He said, Abu Bakr and Umar and the Prophet ﷺ, they taught us how to fight with the disbelievers. I have taught you how to fight with the believers. Yani, the laws, and if this civil war happens between Muslims for any reason, he's not promoting it, of course. What are the adab? What are the conditions? That's why law of rebellion, its main principles are taken from the from the times of Ali, from the civil warfare which happened in the times of Ali, particularly between Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anh and Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan radiyallahu anh. However, considering every ruler like Ali and fixing the great stature of a ruler, because every ruler is Ali and we must not rebel against rulers, is a mistake. Every ruler is not like Ali. So this shifting the focus from the ruler to the Sharia is also very clear in the discussions of Ibn Taymiyyah or his positions on the law of rebellion. So for example, he says in Majmu' al-Fatawa, explaining this mas'ala of rebellion and al-fi'atul baghiyah, the law of rebels, how should we deal with it? Because there is disagreement, discussion about it in Islamic legacy. He says, وَلِهَذَا لما اعتقدت طوائف من الفقهاء وجوب القتال مع علي جعلوا ذلك قاعدة فقهية. For this reason, a group from the fuqaha, from the scholars of fiqh, when they considered fighting alongside Ali, with Ali, against the rebels, obligatory, they turned it into a legal maxim, قاعدة فقهية, legal principle. فيما إذا خرج الطائفة على الإمام بتأويل سائغ وهي عنده راسلهم الإمام فإن ذكروا مظلمة أزالها عنهم. They created a procedure based on Ali رضي الله عنه and how he dealt with the rebels, which is, if a group rebels against the Imam, the Khalifa, with ta'wil, with an accepted interpretation, and if they have interpretation, they have accepted reason, وَهِيَ عِنْدَهُ رَاسَلَهُم, the Khalifa will communicate with them. If they mention a madlama, an injustice which has happened, the Khalifa will azalaha anhum, he will clear it. He will, if it is a genuine injustice which has happened, he will look into it. وَإِنْ ذَكَرُوا شُبْهَةً بَيَّنَهَا, and if they mention a doubt, shubha, they have a doubt, فَإِنْ رَجَعُوا بَيَّنَهَا, the Imam, the Khalifa will explain it. He will engage in discussion with them on the table, he will clear it. فَإِنْ رَجَعُوا, if they return, that is good. وَإِلَّا, and if they don't return, they insist on fighting the Imam, rebelling, وَجَبَ قِتَالُهُمْ عَلَيْهِ وَعَلَى الْمُسْلِمِينَ, it is obligatory on him to fight against the rebels, and it is obligatory on the Muslims as well. This is the qaida, this is the procedure, this is the legal maxim which they extracted, the fuqaha, from Ali radiallahu anh. ثم إنهم أدخلوا في هذه القاعدة, and then they expanded on this qaida, they extended it with the qaida قتال الصديق لمانع الزكاة, the qital of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anh against those who rejected zakah in the times of Abu Bakr. وقتال علي للخوارج المارقين, and the qital of Ali against Khawarij. وصاروا في من يتولى أمور المسلمين من الملوك والخلفاء وغيرهم يجعلون أهل الأدل من اعتقدوه لذلك ثم يجعلون المقاتلين له بغاء. And they extended this principle, they applied it on all rulers and kings. And whoever rebels against a king and a ruler, they considered them rebels, بغاة. لا يفرقون بين قتال الفتنة المنهي عنه والذي تركه خير من فعله, without differentiating between different forms of warfare and qital. Like qital al-fitna, the qital, civil warfare between Muslims, which is prohibited. Leaving it is better than engaging in it. كما يقع بين الملوك والخلفاء وغيرهم وأتباعهم, like it happens between the kings themselves, they fight each other. كاقتتال الأمين والمامون وغيرهما, like it happened between Amin and Ma'mun, the two sons of Harun al-Rashid. وبين قتال الخوارج. The fuqaha, they don't differentiate between this civil warfare and fighting the khawarij, al-hururiyya wal-murtadda, the apostates, wal-munafiqeen, and the hypocrites, ونحوهم. وهذا تجده في الأصل من رأي بعض فقهاء أهل الكوفة. يعني this principle has foundation in the opinion of some fuqaha from Kufa, يعني the Hanafis and their followers. ثم الشافعي وأصحابه, and Shafi and his followers. ثم كثير من أصحاب أحمد الذي صنفوا باب قتال أهل البغي نسجوا على منوال أولئك تجدهم هكذا. And many from the Hanbalis also, who compiled and wrote and expressed their opinions about the rebellion and fighting the rebels, they followed this path. And there is only a small minority which disagrees with this procedure and the legal maxims. Okay, then he explains, he disagrees with them. He says we should differentiate between the rulers who have the genuine authority based on the Sharia and the despots. Rebelling against them sometimes becomes obligatory. So it is not a sin. We should not treat every rebellion in the same manner, like we should not treat every ruler in the same way. And of course, Ibn Taymiyyah is to some extent political pacifist, as we explained. Even in rebellion, genuine rebellion, he mentions strict conditions in order to maintain the safety and stability and benefit of the community. He says it should not lead to more evil and so on and so forth. There are strict conditions, but he mentions this, and in this he separates himself from what became a fixed rule in the classical times. So he says التسوية بين هؤلاء, equating everyone with the same yardstick is wrong. So this is what we said, shifting the focus from the ruler to the Sharia and the methodology of ruling. Okay, and this, as an example, we said this can be clearly understood from the opinions of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah in the law of rebellion, and his shift from the classical fixed notions and legal maxims in the law of rebellion. So it is wrong to say that Ibn Taymiyyah was a complete political pacifist who was against rebellion. This is wrong. Anyone who studies his works, not the extractions and quotes only, but studies his political ideas with patience, will understand that he differentiates different forms of rebellions, and he also does not declare rebellion completely prohibited in all circumstances. We'll stop here, inshallah. In the next session, we will talk about the role of ulama and the community, inshallah, in this political triangle. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us understanding and protect us from evil in this dunya and akhirah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us this principle of justice in our nufus, in dealing with people, in our families, in our communities, in the ruling class. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us just rulers who implement justice in our lands. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us elevate the ummah according to our capabilities. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by his beautiful names and exalted attributes to cure our sick, accept our martyrs, keep us from those who aid and support the cause of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from those who aim to destroy the cause of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cure our sick and to forgive all our dead. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala nabi al-ummi. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.